Ironworks and Jeskai control. You mentioned Brad, a great finish last weekend with the deck. Doing pretty well today.
Yeah, this Brad Nelson guy is pretty good at Magic.
And he'll be on the draw here as Jessup starts on Grove of the Burn Willows. A lot of pressure on Brad early to have those Logic Knots and maybe the one, especially the one Name Deck Negate.
Yeah, when it comes to Logic Knot, you'd like to see Nelson cracking fetch lands to build towards that.
Yeah, he did just cast a Search for Azcanta this turn. That'll start putting cards in the graveyard. As Jessup actually with a slower start, no turn 1 bauble, no Mind Stone. It was Ichor Wellspring as his first play.
Yeah, and the lands, neither of them are Darksteel Citadel so far. That's also a big part of generating the mana to combo with your Karkland Ironworks.
It looks like Jessup's looking for more, plays Chromatic Star, and then sacrifices it to draw a card. 2 mana then, 1 floating. He'll make a second Ichor Wellspring. And passes the turn. With a start like this, Brad would like to have a counterspell up, though. If Andrew just naturally makes Karkland Ironworks, that seems pretty good.
And the interesting development, Nelson just mills over Logic Knot with his search. Must have been off that second blue.
Okay, yeah, I guess if you don't have the second blue, you really can't put it in your hand. But that seems like one of the better cards in this game.
Now down the line, you can still convert it with a Snapcaster Mage. But yeah, just giving up on a counterspell, the best form of interaction he has in the matchup is it's not a good development.
Mind Stone from Andrew Jessup is going to be cast. That's Mind Stone into Terrarian. Brad's hand is working. He has Glacial Fortress, Cryptic Command, and it looks like an end step Electrolyze. You see Andrew just continues to load the board with artifacts. There's another Terrarian.
Yeah, just kind of spinning his tires so far, so Nelson got out of this turn without being comboed.
So he'll cycle through the Electrolyze, send 2 of it upstairs. And back to Brad we go. Mills over a land, draws a land. He will have that Cryptic Command up.
From there, it becomes a lot more difficult for Jessup to combo.
Yeah. He's really trying to sneak under these counterspells as opposed to fighting through them.
Right. In the main deck, it's just a bunch of artifacts.
He does have a Karkland Ironworks, but Andrew did not have land 4 last turn. He doesn't have it this turn either. He has Mind Stone, so he can go for this Karkland, but it is into 4 open mana. He can't like his chances. So he's going to cycle through 2 Terrarians. I don't know that he has the land yet, so he'll cast Ancient Stirrings with one of them. Still trying to make that land up. He's down to 3 mana right now.
And for Jessup, the game plan going along here, he's now going to need to work through all the counter spells in Nelson's hand. He's going to have to run Haymaker, things like Mirror Retriever, Scrap Trawler to try to get back those Ironworks.
And that's where I'm going to be interested. So he has his choice of lands between Buried Ruin and Darksteel Citadel. Normally Darksteel Citadel is the better land here, but because he's so late in the game, you saw him pick up Buried Ruin.
Right, yeah, land you can sacrifice to get an Ironworks back, try again. Though as long as Nelson gets up to 6 mana, has Cryptic Commands, starts snapcasting a Cryptic Command, it's not that difficult for him to keep Jessup from comboing.
Yeah, and Jessup decides to not go for the Ironworks here. You see him, he's just going to make a star, cycle through Chromatic Star. He draws into Chromatic Sphere. He won't be able to go for an Ironworks this turn. Makes the Sphere, cycles through that.
Yeah, building up a big graveyard, though this deck doesn't do anything with that until you start to get your Scrap Trawler on the table.
And toward the end of things, here is Mirror Retriever. 1/1 for 2. When it dies, return an artifact from your graveyard to hand.
Kind of an annoying card. Nelson doesn't really want to use a counter spell on it. Doesn't really want to use a removal spell on it, but in the matchup there's so few cards that matter that using something like a Lightning Bolt or a Helix on this, or even just half an Electrolyze is reasonable. Also, the damage from the Mirror Retriever doesn't really matter over time.
Brad's going to Field of Ruin away that Buried Ruin. Happy to be able to turn that one into just a basic island.
And that takes a little bit of Jessup's ability to try to cast a bunch of Ironworks over multiple turns away. But Jessup did really, need to get lands going to start casting multiple spells anyway. The ruin's either exposed or it's on the bottom of his deck.
And back to Brad we go. Top card will be another island in the graveyard. That's the 6th card in. Draws another fetch land.
And we get to the stage of the phase of the game where Nelson starts activating Escanta the Sunken Rune every turn, starts finding more cryptic commands, more logic knots. It becomes extremely difficult for Jessup to win.
And that seems what he's building toward. He had an option to go for Teferi that turn, but absolutely not going to take down this cryptic command. And next turn he'll get to transform search for Escanta, and we may never see him go for this Teferi.
Right. Not until he has plenty of mana to work with.
Chromatic Sphere, cast and cycled through for Andrew Jessup. So with all this cycling, what is Andrew looking for? Is it a double Ironworks turn?
Yeah, that's really the way that he would be able to break through here. And it's going to be really tough. As long as Nelson can find a juncture, if Jessup continues to make land drops and he accelerates towards 8 mana, then he can have turns where he can threaten 2 spells. But until we get to that point, Nelson's just looking to check a box where he could get up to Teferi just with 2 mana left up, so 7 mana, and then the Teferi untaps 2 lands. You can leave up a cryptic command from that point.
Scrap Trawler here for Andrew Jessup.
And that one you're going to want to fight over with either a counterspell or a Path to Exile. It does attack for 3 at a time, which is not nothing.
And it's going to be a counter draw here for Brad Nelson. That'll earn his cryptic command.
Yeah, the Mere Retriever, you can let that one simmer for a little while. It only attacks for 1. But the Scrap Trawler can be a much larger issue.
That'll fetch on end step. Yeah, but so what are the specific things that, say it's Scrap Trawler resolved, how does that make it impossible for Brad?
So you start doing things like sacrificing your Mind Stone, you get back one of your 1-mana artifacts, and you have more Mind Stones in your deck, so you get back your Chromatic Stars. Just draw a bunch of extra cards. More cards, more access to what's left in your deck makes it easier to set up a turn where you do multiple relevant things in a turn. And it's also just a 3-power creature, and you get to a stage where you cast a second Scrap Trawler, and then they threaten your opponent's life total, and then you add Pyrite Spellbomb to the mix.
Suddenly you're not comboing with KCI.
Right. You're just getting some chip shots.
Brad will transform his Azcanta and draw. It's a copy of Hieroglyphic Illumination. 7 lands in play for Brad. He does have a Snapcaster Mage in hand, so access to another Cryptic. And a little bit of burn. You see Lightning Helix moving its way over to the front of the hand.
It is interesting that Mere Retriever has been hanging out there. Nelson just countered the Scrap Trawler, so that's just in Jessup's graveyard. That's one that Nelson wants to find a more permanent solution to eventually. Something like a Path to Exile on the Retriever does clean that up, but it is an element of the game.
Andrew continuing to work here. He's going to go... Well, he has both Scrap Trawler and Krark Clan Ironworks in his hand, starting the turn with 6 mana. See how he wants to start. Looks like he's going to go for Krark Clan Ironworks first. Brad, Snapcaster Mage. That'll certainly earn his counterspell.
Yes.
And it'll be Cryptic Command. We'll see if it's Counter Draw or Counter Bounce. Very fast Counter Bounce on Snapcaster.
Yeah, he still has that Logic knot in his graveyard that he milled very early with the search for Azcanta.
Right.
That is a nice target for the Snapcaster Mage.
And Brad tapped down meant that Jessup had the opportunity to resolve a Scrap Trawler. No Path to Exile for it either. And we go back over to Brad Nelson. He drew Snapcaster for the turn. That doesn't help, so he will look to Teferi for some help. +1 to draw a card, untaps 2, and he'll pass back.
This is a pretty nice spot for Nelson, because plussing the Teferi puts it at 5 loyalty. That means the Retriever plus the Trawler is 1 shy of lethaling it, and he still gets to leave up Snapcaster Mage a Logic Knot.
Yeah, and if he gets to start playing all these games with a Teferi in play, that's a much bigger win. Right. Now, I believe Andrew Jessup has a Pyrite Spellbomb in hand. If that's true, he can finish off the Teferi, or at least threaten to.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like Krark Clan and Engineered Explosives. Colors of Mana, he has Teamer colors. He can get up to 3. Can't get up to 5 for that Teferi.
Yeah, he worked through all of his Terrarians, his stars, and his spheres as the game has progressed. So,
yeah, if he had a Terrarian play, that would actually be an option.
Right. That's a very interesting element of the Ironworks deck is, again, actually explosives for 5.
2 mana engineered explosives is what Andrew decides on. And Ryan, this is one of those spots, actually, this is so that Andrew can destroy his own cards.
Well, it's his own cards, and then explosives, I suppose, doesn't specifically name land, and it's not all non-land permanents, right? I was thinking because the backside of Search for Escanta still has a convert mana cost of 2, but it won't hit lands.
Right. Yeah, it has to say non-land on it, otherwise you'd have an Armageddon.
There are similar cards.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's on 2. This would remove his 4 of Andrew's own cards. 2 Ichor Wellsprings, Mirror Retriever, and Mind Stone.
Yeah, so it draws some cards. You would hit your Retriever, get back the Scrap Trawler that's been hanging out in the graveyard.
Yeah, this isn't too bad. A swing in will drop the Planeswalker down to 1.
That's a very interesting draw spell, is that Engineer Explosives.
On the subject of draw spells, Mind Stone looks like it might be getting sacrificed here.
It's either sacrificing it before he explosives or just using that mana to activate the explosives because he anticipates needing more mana in the rest of the turn.
And that is what he did. He's sacrificing explosives for 2. So that will hit 4 of his own things. And we do see Lightning Helix in response. Brad is going to Helix that Scrap Trawler, a play I really like.
Yeah, getting that Scrap Trawler off the table before this Mind Stone, those 2 Wellsprings bring back a bunch of 1s.
Scrap Trawler will get back Chromatic Star. And now Andrew sweeps his own board up. He will get 2 draw steps, and before he takes them, he must target something with Mirror Retriever.
I assume it was between Scrap Trawler and Ironworks, actually, though he just cleaned up most of the material he had to work with for an Ironworks.
Nonetheless, looks like he wants Ironworks. And now that he has that, he gets to draw 2. It will be a Chromatic Sphere. And the Spine, is that Spine of Ishsaw?
That is a main deck card.
The 7 mana card. Here's Engineer Explosives again. That one, this time it's for 0. Mox Opal, that will explain it. It's the 3rd artifact, and here's Krark Clan Ironworks.
And that gets under Snapcaster Mage Logic Knot.
It does, and Brad has Logic Knot for 1.
Wow.
Big turn set up by Andrew. He challenged Brad to have a lot. Brad had to tap low. He got a Lightning Helix and a Logic Knot. Brad was at the ready, and now Brad gets to extend his lead with a Teferi in play.
And another win for Brad in that exchange there is Andrew had to go for the Ironworks over using the Spell Bomb to finish off the Teferi. So now Brad gets to draw another card off the Teferi, and then he gets to counter the Spell Bomb if that's a concern of his.
Right, we have a grip full of cards here for Andrew. Remember, those Ichor Wellsprings were sacrificed, but he's going to need a lot of cards at this point to get through what Brad's doing. Brad still has Escanta the Sunken Rune. He hasn't even gotten around to using that yet.
Right. Pretty firmly ahead here, and this combination, Teferi plus Escanta, we've seen this plenty of times. If you have enough mana, you start activating that main phase, the Teferi untaps it. If nothing happens, you can use it on your opponent's turn. All the while finding more Cryptic Commands, more Logic Knots. You pull really far ahead.
Brad's going to cycle Hieroglyphic Illumination, put a land into play tapped, and then untap them both with Teferi. Full mana as he gets to pass the turn. Back to Jessup we go. Things are starting to pull away. He'll go with Chromatic Sphere. Right now he has 9 mana to get through on Brad's side. Draw a card, cast Chromatic Star. Sacrifices Chromatic Star. What does he get? Ancient Stirrings.
Yeah, this deck still has plenty of stuff to spin its tires, though. He's gone through his Scrap Trawlers, his Ironworks that he's already drawn. There's a very small subset of cards that he can use to actually force Nelson to use the counterspells he's drawn. We know that there's a Snapcaster Mage hanging out already.
He finds a copy of Inventor's Fair. And does have 3 artifacts in play, so he'll play that, and that'll give him the opportunity to tutor up any artifact. But every turn he doesn't go for a win, Brad is drawing 2 or 3 cards.
Right. Yeah, the Fair is not bad. It's a way on Nelson's turn to use your mana, drum up whatever artifact you want, but it's looking a lot like he'll need at least 2 things in a turn to really make a meaningful impact on this game.
Top 4 cards here from Brad Nelson. This is off as Kanta. He has the option between Lightning Helix and Path to Exile.
Fairly interchangeable there.
No need to rush winning, but he will take the Lightning Helix.
Right.
And now he's going to start. He feels like at a point where he is safe to start casting cards. It's going to be Lightning Helix upstairs. Andrew to 15. It's going to be Snapcaster Mage on Lightning Helix. Andrew on Lightning Bolt was that Andrew to 12. Another draw off to Fairy. It's Celestial Colonnade.
And then with Nelson taking this aggressive stance, you can rest assured that he has enough permission locked up in his hand. He's going to be able to stop Jessup from getting into this game.
Lightning Helix from Brad sends Andrew to 7. That's after the attack. He'll play Celestial Colonnade and pass that Colonnade. Plus Snapcaster represents nearly lethal here.
Doesn't take too much else to pull that together.
Yeah, so Andrew's going to have 1 turn to make something happen. He'll sacrifice Inventor's Fair on end step to set that up. And he'll get another Corkland Ironworks to try to force one of those through.
It's kind of a last-ditch effort here. With the resources that Jessup's untapping with, he basically needs Nelson to have just no interaction here.
Well, he has 7 mana sources. If he has an 8th mana source and 2 Corkland Ironworks, he can go for both of them, and if one of them sticks, we're still playing.
Yeah, he can get going, though. He has very few artifacts still on the battlefield.
Right.
That explosives earlier drew him some cards off of those Ichor Wellsprings, but it put him way behind the materials.
Well, here we go. Play number 1 is Corkland Ironworks. Brad has Snapcaster Mage. For a Logic Knot, it looks like, in his yard. And he has to delve 4 away. He'll do just that. That will counter the KCI. If Andrews could have land and another try at it.
He'd need a bit more than that as well.
Yeah, that by
That's the
itself
starting
isn't
point.
enough, right?
Yeah, that's the minimum to get going.
And he doesn't even have a second try. So here's Mind Stone. Mind Stone casts Chromatic Star. Buried Ruin is the land for the turn. He's going to sacrifice Star to Buried Ruin. Draws into something else. His hand is just Scrap Trawler. As he Legend Rules away his own Opal, and he'll just make Scrap Trawler and say go. And Brad has the Bolt plus the board. That is going to do it. Game 1 goes to Brad Nelson with Jeskai Control. It's Game 1's a tough one, actually, for him, but he manages to take it.
Yeah, he drew just enough counterspells, and Jessup did have a slower start.
Yeah, well, it was a start with a lot of these baubles, a lot of Wellsprings, but he actually just didn't seem to have the Corkland Ironworks early.
Right. Resolving an Ironworks there, it's pretty easy to see how he could have rolled up a combo. But just with a little bit slow out of the gates, wasn't able to start trying to execute his game plan until Nelson was already online with Cryptic Command, and that was the story of the game.
All right, so Andrew is going to go to the sideboard. Now, I do want to start actually with Brad's sideboard because this is the player who's really going to change his deck the most. 2 Ceremonious Rejection, 2 Celestial Purge, 2 Dispel, 2 Surgical Extraction, 2 Vendilion Click, and a Braid, a Baneslayer Angel, an Engineer Explosives, a Second Negate, and a Lyra Dawnbringer. There's arguments for a lot of different cards here.
Yeah, so the front runners here, the 2 Ceremonious Rejection, those are excellent. They'll take care of Ironworks, Scrap Crawler, it does it all, any colorless spell. Negate is excellent against the namesake card here. You like that. Now you see when you look over at Jessup's side, he's bringing in a small number of his own counter magic, but it's so small that I don't think we're quite at the point where we want Dispel, barring wanting to cut a ton of cards from our own deck. But the 2 surgical extractions, they are quite powerful. You counter 1 Ironworks, you get them all. Similar with Scrap Trawler, that can be part of the plan. The 2 Vendilion Clicks, very excellent against a combo deck that's playing at sorcery speed.
Does it bother you? Now, it's pretty well known that Andrew's going to go toward a lot of size and Thopters post-board. Does that make you shy away from Vendilion Click?
I mean, size specifically is an issue. That more makes me want to make sure that I have my Path to Exiles intact, try to have answers to Sai, because if you're talking about a game where Jessup is just hanging out making Thopters, you have to kill the Sai. Jeskai doesn't have closing speed. It's more so that the Sai is going to win the game than it's good against specifically Vendilion Click.
All right. So, Brad, we like Ceremonious Rejection. Do you like Vendilion Click? Surgical Extraction, Abrade, how do you feel about these?
I like the Surgical. Abrade is medium in the matchup. I think the configuration of a Jeskai deck arguably justifies it if you have enough cards coming out.
It's pretty funny that a 2-mana card that destroys an artifact against an all-artifacts deck is maybe not good in the matchup.
Right,
I like that.
Ironworks, just this Mirror Retriever, Scrap Trawler kind of stuff. It's just the case with all these Ichor Wellsprings, Traumatic Stars, letting Karkline Ironworks resolve, letting your opponent use the mana abilities to draw cards a bunch, and then hitting them with a Shatter. Jeskai has a lot of better options. You would much rather have your counter spells.
So for Star City Games Game Night, these are pins and tokens you can win at local tournaments all around the country. In December, we've been giving away the Bramble Hopper Elite. You can find these near you, and we do want to preview some of the ones coming up in 2019. First of all, Game Night gets a makeover. Boom.
Oh, yeah.
Blue screen, fancy star, and we're going to lead it off with a cat token. This is the Perdukin, the 1/1 wizard token. That's going to be given away in January. And in February, we have Yeti Steady Go. That is 3/3 beast token. You can see these ones and find a location near you at starcitygames.com/game night.
That Yeti didn't look like a 3/3 to me.
Look, that's small for a Yeti. The baby Yetis are 3/3s. The big ones are bigger.
Is that small for a Yeti? How big did a Yeti get?
Pretty big.
I suppose Yeti would probably be about as powerful as Iwamori of the Open Fist.
Let's see. We're on our way game number 2. Andrew Jessup. Land Mox Opal Chromatic Sphere. This could be one of the faster starts. This Brad shocks for a Steam Vents.
He does play Ceremonious Rejection out of the sideboard.
Needs to stop a turn 2 Krark Clan Ironworks.
I think that Brad Nelson's shocking with that Steam Vents regardless.
Oh, he's Brad Nelson.
That doesn't tell you anything about his hand. And it's a matchup where it's pretty free to do that.
Andrew will cycle through the Chromatic Sphere, plays Ichor Wellspring. Does that resolve? Yes. Yavimaya Coast from Jessup, and he passes. Decides to leave up that coast. He actually could have gone for some 1-mana artifacts. I believe it has a Spell Bomb in hand, but decides to just keep open the mana.
No more opportunities for Ceremonious Rejection. There's kind of an interesting thing if that's the counterspell available, with Logic Knot being the most abundant counterspell on 2 in the Jeskai deck.
Yeah, he can't do it.
If you don't allow a window for the rejection, then the Logic Knot certainly doesn't do anything. Though, waiting, the rejection is just going to show up later anyway.
Speaking of just Brad Nelson plays, Brad is the kind of player who might have a fetch land, but if he had Ceremonious Rejection, he would intentionally not make it so that his opponent might jam.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here. Don't even try to get a read on this guy.
No, it's he will. If you ever talk to him about games, he will tell you lines like that. He says, "I find when I don't play fetch lands, they jam into my counter spells more, so I try to never play them in this matchup."
We're all playing Magic. He's playing Nelson Ball.
Turn 3, Brad's going to shock again and go to 16.
Yeah, why not?
He's got an Electrolyze he's got to take care of.
It's a free roll.
Probably has some, like another Glacial Fortress, but he's choosing to shock.
Yeah.
Shock for Pilot Fountain, you know.
Make him think.
Make him think I'm on the back foot. Boom, take 2 more.
Oh, wow, you're really far ahead on life totals here, Andrew.
Yeah. This is my last land.
I'm really struggling over here.
Electrolyze, Brad shoots 2 upstairs. deals 2 back. Andrew's got a bunch of mana here. See Mox Opal slipped in with the lands, and now Inventor's Fair joined up. That's going to be able to be used on the end step.
Now, I think that may have been Nelson's last land, actually.
It actually was? Well, sometimes the thing about a bluff is that sometimes it's actually what's happening.
That's true. A double bluff.
That's not good. I mean, I wouldn't put, like I said, I wouldn't put it past him to discard the hand size as a bluff. I've seen him do it, but I don't think it is the case right now.
In a matchup where Cryptic Command is so important.
Well, you're like, I have Ceremonious plus Negate. If I discard a card here, then he'll certainly jam into these counter spells.
I'm seeing, I want to say, yeah, there's a Dispel in the holdings. He has brought that in. There's a Ceremonious Rejection, Snapcaster Mage, Logic Knot,
yeah.
Cryptic Command, Teferi.
This is a lot of counter spells.
Yeah, but you need lands. This game will be a lot easier for Jessup to engineer a situation where he casts 2 relevant spells in a turn. Even with 3 lands, Nelson is at the ready with Rejection plus Logic Knot on a turn like that.
Raz says go to discard. He's going to pitch a Snapcaster Mage. Love it. Andrew Upkeep gains a life off Inventor's Fair. He actually doesn't sacrifice Inventor's Fair just yet, looking to press a bit of a mana advantage.
Yeah, just compound that life total advantage.
Now it's 19 to 16.
Ooh, Ancient Stirrings for Krark Clan Ironworks.
All right, all right. Now Brad might actually have to have the counterspell.
Yeah, luckily for him, he does. He's been representing Ceremonious Rejection the entire game.
Jessup going to cycle through the spell bomb, but then decides the better of it. And then goes back to sacrificing it. All right. We see Terrarian picked up. He also has Spine of Ishsa in his hand.
Ooh, just get to 7, cast that one, force some action there.
Casts Terrarian, says go.
Basically Karn.
Brad, it looks like we're going to miss the land drop again. But not out of it, despite normally when Jeskai misses 2 land drops, you wrap it up. Brad actually, I think, picked up Surgical Extraction as well. So for only 3 lands, most of his hand is castable.
Yeah, he can do some things. The Snapcaster Mage discarding the interesting turn over the Teferi was kind of interesting.
I was surprised about that. He's got a Ceremonious Rejection. Even on 3 mana, he can Snapcast it.
Right. To be fair, his deck is very light on things that actually close the game.
Ryan, Brad, just, you got to explain to me the rules of Nelson Ball. So
I don't know how to play that
we're discarding
game,
a Logic Knot now.
You know what? I'm in the booth. He's out of there.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like, it's a really, I'm sure it's many levels above where I'm going to say, oh, Logic Knot's good in this matchup. And it's like, we're going to pitch it. I mean, I think
it's
hard to counter, right?
His graveyard is very shallow.
Okay.
And Jessup has just made a bunch of land drops.
Okay.
Logic Knot is losing value very quickly.
Okay. But we have cards like Dispel and Teferi.
I mean, it could be the case that Nelson is just trying to suggest, listen, my hand's got a bunch of these. I got a lot of counter spells that cost
discard
2. In fact, I have so many that I have to discard Logic Knot to hand size.
I have so many Ceremonious Rejections in my hand right now that this Logic Knot's never getting cast. Discard it.
Right.
This is awesome. And Andrew sifts through some artifacts and passes back, and now Brad hits land 4. Ooh. Boom. Now we're in trouble.
Well, Jessup still has a lot of resources here.
And then somehow we got to a point, though. Brad was stuck on lands for so many turns, and Andrew still has never been able to jam into them. And now he has 2 Krark Clan Ironworks as he cycles through that Terrarian.
He'd like to cast some spells that can start checking Nelson.
Yeah, well, I like the Mind Stone. Getting up to enough mana we can start casting 2 relevant cards per turn seems really good here.
Yes, absolutely.
And, mana, he's putting a premium on it, right? He hasn't sacrificed the Inventor's Fair at all this game. Mm-hmm. He says, go, Brad. You're going to make some plays on end step. It's Cryptic. It's going to be Bounce Draw on Yavimaya Coast.
Yeah, that'll fight on the mana front. It also forces Jessup, if he wants to use the Inventor's Fair on this turn cycle, he'll have to do it now. That would give Nelson some more information, but the Ironworks deck doesn't really play on the opponent's turn. It's not a huge difference in terms of when you spend your mana.
And I like this play with Cryptic. A lot of I think players would be tempted to keep it here because it's such a great card in the matchup. But Andrew's clearly setting up for a turn where he's going to try to resolve multiple threats at once. And on that turn, Cryptic won't be good.
Right. It's just so mana inefficient. And also the draw car mode, that was the big part of that turn. He wants to make sure he can keep hitting land drops.
Yeah, he hit lands five off the Cryptic and then lands 6 for the turn. So now he should be set up.
Right.
Now still has that Teferi. Remember, that was not discarded early on. Looks like he may get rewarded for that. Jessup going to decide it is time to try for his first Cart Clan Ironworks, and Brad quickly ceremonious rejections it.
There's definitely something to Nelson using his most efficient counterspell in hand with 5 mana available.
Ancient Stirrings for Jessup. Does it suggest that there's another Cryptic he wants to convert end step? Or...
There's that. Also represents Snapcaster Mage.
Ichor Wellspring was the find from Jessup, which he will cast.
Legacy players, around 2 pairings have been posted. 130 Legacy, around 2 pairings have gone up.
Jessup has picked up his sideboard copy of Swan Song. That helps a bit in a situation where your control opponent is so light on mana.
Swan Song, a pretty good offensive counterspell. Brad, it looks he is debating a surgical extraction. Maybe he got. So maybe that could be why he's holding up all the mana. If this makes sense, if this is the play he's setting up for, surgicaling the Cart Clan Ironworks, he wanted all his mana so that he could fight with Dispel, with Logic Knot, everything over this play.
Sure.
And that's going to work. I assume this is targeting KCI.
Yeah, there's not really much in the way of better targets.
Yeah, and that one is gone. So Andrew's going to have to win. I mean, he does have size in the deck. It's not impossible to win from here, but it certainly got harder.
Gets quite a lot harder, yeah. And the hand here doesn't really have cards that combine great with Sai either. You have a bunch of artifacts you can cast. Sai is pretty good when you start going Chromatic Star, Chromatic Sphere. It's also a very big question mark as to whether Jessup will be able to resolve a Sai.
You see Brad, as he pulls out the 4 Cart Clan Ironworks, he's going to count through the deck to find out what all the threats Andrew Jessup has, to make sure he can catch each of them.
Yep, checking on the sideboard plan too. Spotted a negate fanning out the deck. That makes sense.
Sees the Swan Song in hand, Spine of Ishsaw in hand, and now we untap to Brad's turn. Draws into Field of Ruin. Still has that Teferi. Could get Spine of Ishsod.
As long as you leave up some kind of counterspell, it's pretty easy to catch the Spine.
Well, how about 2 counterspells, a Logic Knot and a Negate? Brad will play Teferi and immediately draw another copy. Maybe he won't even bother with the Spine.
Yeah, once the Ironworks are out of the deck, that Spine just converts once.
Yeah, there's actually not another way to destroy it. I don't believe.
You can sacrifice it and another artifact to Sai Master Thopterist.
Okay.
But we're talking about a game that's developed much beyond the point that we're looking at right now.
Yeah, Teferi at 5 up, back to Jessup we go. Looks like 3 mana to start the turn. It's going to be a copy of Scrap Trawler. Brad with a lot of control cards already. We already know about a Logic Knot and Dispel. 3 mana up.
Now the Trawler is something that if you're really concerned, you spend your next turn just -3ing the Teferi on it. Maintain your counterspells for something that might be more difficult, like a Sai.
Andrew will sacrifice the Mind Stone to draw another card here. With that Scrap Trawler, he gets back a card. Legend rules away his own Mox Opal. And continues to go. He's going to cast Chromatic Star. He can do some looping with Scrap Trawler, some card advantage. Sacrifices Chromatic Star, drawing a card, getting back Mox Opal. Draws into another Chromatic Star. He can keep pace on mana here, but he's not actually making much progress.
Yeah. Gets to beef up the hand a little bit, but churn through some cards.
Yeah, I mean, he's replacing his stars here, and it's free because he's looping through Mox Opals, but all of the effect is he's for 0 mana cycling through Chromatic Stars.
Right.
Which, okay, is fine.
Into his deck that still no longer has its namesake card.
Yeah, it's not getting him anywhere, and his opponent's still going to untap with Teferi.
Right.
History of Ravnica sealed players. Your round 3 pairings have
And at the end of this, he will pass back into Brad Nelson we go, drawing a card here up to 6 in hand. Got Snapcaster, some 2 lands and a second Teferi. So he'll take at this turn, attempt to -3 the Teferi and tuck away Scrap Trawler.
Yeah, once the Trawler resolved, that was my assumption what Nelson's plan was to start this turn off.
Sure. See if he wants to deploy a second Teferi. He'll shock down to 12. And the answer is no, he's just going to shock down to 12. Passes back to Jessup.
Yeah, let's leave a bunch of counter spells here. An abundance of mana to work with, and even more on future turns as he starts to plus the Teferi again.
And Andrew, with 7 mana, looks like we're winding up for the Spine of Ishsa.
With Swan Song backup.
See if Brad even wants to fight over
Yeah,
it.
it's not really a pressing need, though. You don't have to cast Teferi on the next turn if you fight over this, which is somewhat of a win. That's something Nelson cares about a fair amount.
Snapcaster on Cryptic Command, counter bouncing. Andrew will Swan Song and Brad will Dispel. At the end of the day, Swan Song's countered. Brad taps all his lands, but gets the Snapcaster back into his hand. Not much progress made by Jessup.
Yeah, in a lot of the games, Cryptic Command's very inefficient in the matchup. Well, Spine of Ishsa is a little bit more inefficient.
That does seem to be the case. Brad draws. Now is it going to be another Teferi? Looks like he wants to load up more loyalty onto that Planeswalker.
Yeah, once you start your turn plussing the Teferi on that turn, then you play this one, plus it, you untap 4 lands. It's a lot different than only untapping 2.
I'll draw again. Draws into Negate. His hand is now 2 Snapcasters and Negate and Logic Knot. The wall of counterspells is getting pretty thick.
Right. He also got to substantially increase the amount of loyalty on his Teferi, so he's much closer to Ultimate now with that second copy. Once you start exiling your opponent's lands, pretty trivial to end the game.
Yeah, you just don't. You let them end it. Whenever they would like. It's
Right.
totally,
Listen, I'm going to exile your permanents. I can do this all day. At least until I draw the next 30 cards.
I don't know if you got Teferi solves that problem.
Okay, just put the Teferi back in your deck. It's
Here-
too easy.
Here is Sai from Andrew. The Master Thopterus is what he's going to try for, and that wall of counterspells you mentioned, we're going to get to see it in full force. Brad will Logic Knot on Sai. We'll go to a Delve. There's 5 mana up. Brad will have to delve 6 cards. Not a problem.
It's most of his graveyard.
Gets to keep 1.
Probably some lean counter spell.
So Logic Knot delving 2, paying 2. So he's actually giving, is he giving Andrew the ability to pay?
No, I think he's just still deciding
Okay.
what he wants to keep in the graveyard.
Yeah,
So
look,
first he
6,
settled
yeah.
on, I want a few of these. And he's picking which ones.
All right, so it looks like X is going to equal 6 on this, so he's going for just enough to make this a hard counter. 2 mana and 4 cards delved. And then let's decide, yes, that's going to be it. Logic Knot's on the stack.
Keeping Dispel, Surgical. Pretty good
ceremonious,
targets.
yeah, is the third one.
Good range of targets for Snapcaster Mage.
Yeah, I guess in this matchup, those really are the 3 cards you want to have.
Yep.
And Sai is countered. Andrew cannot pay. And passes back to Brad. Gets to refresh the lands. Just under 10 minutes remaining in the round. We're in game 2, but if Brad can keep hold of this lead, there won't be a game 3.
Yeah, he has a very commanding lead here.
Yeah, and it's just been incrementally built off over these turns, but now it's starting to feel insurmountable.
Yeah, I mean, this is a situation very similar to where we were in game 1, where Jessup had to assemble a lot from nothing, starting from a position of just lands and cogs, nothing really going on. Key difference, Jessup's Krark Clan Ironworks have already been hit by surgical extraction. He's drawing to way fewer things that matter.
And this was a game where Brad was stuck on 3 lands for quite a few turns early on.
Right.
Scrap Trawler. Showing some strength from Brad. Ooh, Cryptic Command. It's a card he probably could let resolve, but he's feeling, I think at this point he feels strong enough where he just doesn't have to let anything resolve.
Yeah, if it was still unclear exactly how Brad's going to cross the finish line, if he didn't have the Teferi,
right,
then you might try to be a little bit fancier with your play,
like
but
let it happen, -3 it, hold the Cryptic.
Well, let's say that just Teferi's not available. Let it happen, Lightning Helix it.
Yeah.
If you have a good target, surgical extract, whatever you get back with the Trawler.
Nature's Claim from Jessup will take care of Search for Escanta.
That one's kind of whatever.
Yeah, Brad doesn't need Search to win this game.
Plus, it gets him much closer in the life total race.
Yeah, Brad up to 16 now. So Vander casts 3 more Nature's Claims.
There's not 3 more targets.
It's going to be hard. It's got a second Search. I see your point.
Oh, no.
Brad's working back. He's good. Surgically extracts again. This time we're going for size.
All right.
Okay. With Sai gone and Krark Clan Ironworks gone, I don't really see how Andrew wins.
Right.
Scrap Trawler beats is not going to be enough.
Yeah, with Nelson already online with Teferi, no.
And yeah, Andrew shows the hand of negate Inventor's Fair Mox Opal.
And that is interesting. He could have fought over the surgical with the negate. But hey, this game's already so far gone. I'm not sure exactly what he's trying to draw to.
Well, we'll start in on the life total. Andrew down to 22. Teferi up to 7. Now Brad will go to work on the Inventor's Fair. Get that last basic out of Jessup's deck. It's the basic island. Should be in there.
You might see Jessup Buried Rune for that Spine of Ishsaw. Very unlikely that that would resolve. But you got to do something about that Teferi.
Yeah, up to 7. And back to Andrew we go. Inventor's Fair again. Taps Mox Opal for 1. It's going to go and makes another Mox Opal, so 1's floating. Here is 7 mana. It looks like it's going to be a Spine of Ishsaw with negate backup. He's just going to have to start again.
Yeah,
Kill the Teferi, you know.
I mean, this might clear the Teferi.
Okay.
Brad also just might have 2 counter spells.
Here's another Snapcaster from Brad. Snapcaster on Cryptic. Cryptic counterbounce the other Snapcaster. Here's a negate on that Cryptic. Here's a negate back. And Andrew will extend the hand. So, Brad Nelson on Jeskai Control, a 3-1 showing this morning, means he will enter the last leg of the tournament at 10-2. For Andrew Jessup, our last undefeated